Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And I love it. I absolutely love it when I can actually showcase some of my own undercover superheroes in my life on the podcast. And today is definitely one of my superheroes. I'd like to introduce you to Carly Pollack. She is the founder of Nutritional Wisdom, which is a thriving private practice based in Austin, Texas. She's a certified clinical nutritionist specializing in holistic nutrition and wellness. Now, the girl knows her stuff. Let's just say that right out. She has been awarded Best Nutritionist in Austin 3 years running and has helped over 10,000 people, including myself, achieve their health and happiness goals. She has lectured for all sorts of incredible companies like Facebook, Whole Foods Market, Texas Women's Conference, Live Strong, you name it. She has spoken to some of the greatest in Austin and around the U.S. Now, growing up, Carly struggled with anxiety, autoimmune issues, and an ongoing battle with her weight. Through trial and error, and as she says, mostly error, Carly was able to figure out why so many of us fail to achieve the health we so badly desire. She's a New Yorker, she's quick-witted, and I know you're going to love hearing from her today. I'd like to introduce to you Carly Pollack. Hi, Carly.
Hi. Hey, girl.
And Carly, I am so thrilled that you're on the podcast today. I failed to mention also that you've just signed on with New World Library Publishers, which we've actually featured quite a few authors from New World so far. So you've got a book coming out in January 2019 as well, right?
Yes, I do. It's called Feed Your Soul, Nutritional Wisdom to Lose Weight Permanently and Live Fulfilled.
Awesome. We are going to talk all about that here in a bit. But what I really wanted to talk to you on this episode today is all about self-care. So our listeners are small business owners, solopreneurs. They're women who are doing all the things.
Don't I know it?
Yes.
Don't I know it?
And, you know, when we talk about self-care, it sounds like, oh, yeah, that's another thing to put on my to-do list, right? So let's back up. Tell me a little bit about you first and how you began your own business.
Well, you know, I really do feel like we teach what we most need to learn. Mm-hmm. It really started far before I opened Nutritional Wisdom. Like you said, I just struggled so much in my life. And I remember at one point taking a step back and looking at the fact that I had a master's degree in holistic nutrition. I had all these certifications. I was doing this work already. I hadn't started my own business, but I was working for Whole Foods Market. I was the nutritionist for the flagship store. Mm-hmm. And I was suffering. I had horrible body image. I was what I call a weekday warrior, where I ate really clean during the week because I was stressed and I was moving and food wasn't a really main priority for me. But then on the weekend, I would just binge. It was, you know, anything that wasn't strapped down, I was going to put in my mouth. Mm-hmm. And then Monday, again, waking up with that regret saying, okay, this Monday is going to be the day that I turn it all around, and only to have this diet-induced type of Groundhog Day week after week after week. And it was then that I realized that there was something far beyond the logistics of nutrition, far beyond knowing what I needed to do. I needed to really start to study the mind and what drives people, what drives behavior, so I can get to a point where I really was a living example of how I was trying to inspire others. And that's really what led me to Nutritional Wisdom, and how unique it is, because it's not just a nutrition consulting business, but it's life consulting, it's spiritual advising. It really puts it all together for someone.
Which is, you know, fascinating to me, because every single episode on this podcast, Carly, I'm not joking, like every single one, doesn't matter if we're talking about sleep or cash flow or nutrition, it all comes back to your brain, your mindset, every single one.
It's all a game.
Yeah.
And especially with health, it is 90% the mind and 10% logistics. Mm-hmm. You need the logistics. And believe me, the logistics, I understand why it's so confusing for people, because there's the paleo diet, the vegan diet, the only eat fruits and vegetables diet. Then it's the exercise variation that people are learning So I understand the confusion, but we do place way too much importance on how many carbs should I be eating? Should I be doing this diet or that? And not enough importance on what are my beliefs? What are my stories? What am I thinking? And how conscious we are moving through the day.
Mm-hmm. Now, you just had a baby. So at the time of this recording, little Tilly is 4 months old. So talk about like you are in it, girl. Like,
oh, I am in it deep.
In it.
I am really having to walk the talk.
Right.
And I've had to redefine a lot of things, which is probably the most important tool when you are in business or you have some sort of really important life change, whether it's a marriage, a move, a baby, is that it can't be black and white. It just can't.
Right.
I had to redefine, for example, I have a meditation practice for many, many years, and I practice a sort of meditation where you meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. It's called Nilakantha meditation. It's very similar to Transcendental Meditation or TM, which most people recognize it. And then I had the baby, and now I have to redefine my meditation practice is 5 minutes at 3 a.m. after I've nursed the baby and put her back down, as I'm going back to sleep, to use my mantra and do 5 minutes of meditation. That has to be enough. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It has to be enough right now. And if we don't redefine as our life shifts, then the voice in our head is going to tell us that we're not doing enough. That will create more stress in the body than any sugar, gluten, or dairy could create. And then we're chasing a diet thinking that's going to make us healthy when we haven't addressed the number one thing that causes disease, which is stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have a sneaking suspicion, and I'm curious if you have the data points to back this up, but when you're stressed, you're not digesting. Like your tummy just doesn't know how to process the foods, and so it holds on to it and clenches. At least that's what it seems like with me.
Here's the science behind that. And people don't realize that hormones rule everything. Mm-hmm. It is not about calories in versus calories out. That's a piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. But hormones trump that any day of the week. So when you're stressed, you go into a fight or flight, and you're a fight or flight stage, and your adrenals start to pump out cortisol, adrenaline, all these other stress fight or flight hormones. What happens when those hormones start circulating through your body is your digestion shuts off, because you don't need to digest food when you're fighting or flighting, when you're trying to survive. Your blood goes into your arms and legs so that you could quite literally fight or flight. And then you eat food and your digestive juices aren't flowing because that's not where the body's putting its focus. And you stop digesting food. It starts putrefying in your gut. Then you get candida overgrowth, leaky gut, parasite overgrowth. You have all these digestive issues, which then cause, foggy brain and mood issues because the gut and the brain are connected. And this is how we slowly unravel, especially women, because we have reproductive hormones that play a role into it. And I could go on and on about the science, but whatever you are intuitively feeling, you're correct. There's science to back that.
It's wild. I mean, when you're talking about that, I think I've heard this from other people. It's like it does go back to kind of the early caveman, early cavewoman thing, right? When you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger, you're not digesting food. You're moving blood to your legs to get the heck out of there, right?
There's this really amazing book, if anyone is interested in this. It's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And the book explains the one thing that I always remember from this book. It said that the body has a turn on and turn off mechanism for every single piece of information that it's experiencing. Mm-hmm. But stress is the only thing that the body cannot distinguish between you running from a bear or sitting at your desk in front of a long list of emails that you need to get out and feeling stressed about that. The same exact thing happens in the body as if you were literally running for your life.
Mm-hmm. And if you're listening to this right now, raise your hand if you have a long list of emails waiting for you right now. I mean, lots of people do. And I mean, because that's the pace of where we're at as a modern 21st century society. So let's bring it back. this is why self-care is so important, right? Like
Yeah.
you talk about it as being a non-negotiable. It's not a, oh, it would be nice. Like it's important, non-negotiable. Why?
And I'll say before that I almost hate the word self-care now. I wish that we had another word for it because it's so cheesy at this point because everyone's saying self-care, self-care, self-care. And I want to be clear before we talk about how important it is that I don't mean taking a bath with bubbles or your 1990s bath beads that you never threw away. And so maybe you decide that today's the day.
Yeah.
It's not that type of self-care. And that's why it's non-negotiable. Taking a bath with bubbles is negotiable. Self-care, having rituals day in and day out that allow you to ground into an intuitive place where you are able to listen to a higher version of yourself instead of the monkey mind to drive your day-to-day behaviors, it's non-negotiable.
Yeah. And I mean, that's it. Like it's so much deeper. It's not just getting a pedicure. It's not just, I mean, those things are nice, but it is so much deeper to that. So
I don't know if you feel this way, but when I'm getting a mani-pedi, I almost feel like that's on a list.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like self-care to me. My nails need to look fresh. And so, I need to get it done. That doesn't feel like I'm tapping into my intuitive self. I'm answering emails while I'm getting a mani.
Right.
Or a pedi. And so, when I think of self-care, I don't think of it the way that the mainstream culture would say it's a manicure, pedicure, it's a bath. I'm really thinking about these day-to-day rituals that allow us to come from a higher place, or else you're going to be driven by fear in every single thing you do, because that's the survival mode. This is a big takeaway. The mind, in order to make us feel safe, it wants us to be afraid. In order to feel safe, we have to be afraid, because when you're afraid, you have a heightened sense of your surroundings and a heightened sense of what's going on. So think about how the mind works. You book a ticket on vacation. The first thing you think of is, what if it's delayed? What if the plane crashes? You have a win in business. Let's say you get a contract for something. Then the mind goes, what if XYZ goes horribly wrong?
Yeah.
Every time something comes to you that's a gift in your life, the mind says, be afraid, think of worst case scenario. So this way, if you plan it out, you'll be much more likely to survive through it if it happens.
Gosh, that's so interesting.
It's fascinating. And I just want you to think about every single, the second I got the book deal, I celebrated for 5 minutes. And then the mind said, what if you don't sell any books?
But isn't that self-sabotage? I mean, that's what that is, right?
It's a way of protecting us in a way that worked very long time ago.
Yeah.
Our brains are like outdated computers
that need
and
an
what
update.
helped us run from a bear and avoid, to really survive. Now I don't need food, shelter, water. Those are not the survival, worries. I'm worrying about whether I'm good enough, whether I'm doing enough, whether all my boxes are checked. So my mind is working, hundreds of thousands of years ago. So that's why it's not serving us today.
So tell us then a big picture first on what you believe are the 5 pillars of non-negotiable self-care. And then maybe we can zoom in on 1 or 2 just in the time that we have on today's episode.
Yeah. I believe that the 5 pillars of non-negotiable self-care are cooking. I believe that exercise and moving your body is so important. Meditation, sleeping, and the 5th one I call silence, which is making sure that you have time where you're not speaking, where there's no energy going out. So there's no phone, there's no computer, there's no speaking. It's a time to go within.
Yeah. And now we recently had a fellow friend of ours, Carrie Conti, on the podcast recently, and she talks about these things called macro and micro moments. So like what you're talking about here could be just teeny tiny micro moments. We're not talking like 8 hours of silence. It could be 2 minutes, right?
One thing that I do that I was noticing, I was rushing through, is when I get home from work, the first thing I want to do is take my bra off, take my makeup off, and I want to get into, cozy mode.
Mm-hmm.
When I would take my makeup off, I'm, rubbing it off vigorously. It doesn't feel good. I'm still thinking about work. This is what I guess you would say is a micro moment, was I spend all this money on beautiful face care. I'm not even smelling it.
Yeah.
So I would slow down. I would treat my face as if I were getting a facial. That's how I would touch my face. I would really be present to the water, at the temperature of the water, the feeling of washing away the day. It's 2 minutes, and I would have taken that time anyway. But there's something so nourishing about bringing an intention of presence to what we're doing. Same thing in the shower. Are you shampooing your hair, thinking about the laundry list of things you need to do? Or are you feeling the water on your skin, smelling these products that you specifically chosen to put on your body, thinking about gratitude, I have a window by my shower. I open the window, I smell the air. These are these tiny moments that I consider more important in the realm of self-care than getting a pedicure.
And, I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in the map right here for all of my listeners who are scoffing at this, going, ugh, Carly, you're telling me to smell the soap and feel the breeze. Like, just go with us for a second, because genuinely, I would say maybe a year or 2 years ago, my husband, who's British, certainly would be scoffing right now. But I just want to say, it works. It works.
Hop on the hippie train with me, people.
Yeah, because it really does work. I mean, when you slow down, and if you are having that triggered moment right now where you're just like, I don't have time for that, that's exactly the time you need to slow down. And when you do slow down and be intentional is when actually you feel more, aligned, centered.
And there's this famous quote, which I'll for sure fudge because I've been sleep deprived for a good 6 months now. But it says, if you don't have time for 20 minutes of meditation, then you need an hour. So if there's anyone that's saying, I don't have time for that, then girl, you need time for something bigger than 2 minutes washing your face, which is always what I took away from that quote. I'm also careful never to say the phrase, I don't have time.
Yeah.
That never comes out of my mouth, because I know for a fact that you make time for the things that are important to you. I always use the words, I am not willing to make the time. I'm not willing to prioritize this, because words carry so much importance. And when I say that, it triggers me to really check in. Am I not willing to make the time on this? This one thing seems really important. Why am I not willing to make the time? Is there a fear-based story behind this that's causing me to feel like I don't have time? Right. My nightmare is if I feel like at the end of the day, I wish there were more hours in a day. We've all said it from time to time, being entrepreneurs and solopreneurs. It's the worst feeling in the world. Yeah. It feels like scarcity times a million.
And that's where that I'm not enough bubbles up, of like, I'm not doing enough. If I could just send one more email, if I could just do this, and it's a trap. It's a trap.
Yeah. When it comes to self-care, I have to think about my business like a faucet, and this has been really helpful for me. I can always work. And that belief, just answer, it's Friday afternoon, and I say to myself, just answer a couple more emails so that you can have the weekend. People write back. That's the problem. I answer all my emails. My email inbox looks great. And then people start writing back. I say, don't write me back.
Right.
No. I didn't say you could write me back. I start to visualize it like a faucet. When I shut it off, it shuts off. And when I turn it on, it turns on again. And as long as I don't shut it off for too long, when it turns on, it just flows. I have to visualize that, or else I would never shut it off. There's 15 million things I could be doing for my business at all times that, that would make me feel like there's just not enough time in the day for self-care.
Yeah. So you talk about, and I've been following you, and you've been my nutritionist for years now, and you talk about resources versus resourcefulness. Can you give us a little bit more about what you mean by that?
No matter how rich what type of person of power you are, we only have three resources available to all of us. And that is time, money, and the help of other people. Those are our three resources. No matter how rich you are never going to feel like you have enough of these three. You may have a lot of money, but then you don't have a lot of time. You may have a lot of time, but then you don't have a lot of money. Resourcefulness is how resourceful you are with your time, money, and other people. And I'll give you a few examples. I had this woman come in to see me as a client, and she was complaining that she really wanted her kid to go to Montessori school. Do you have Montessori out there?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So she wanted her kid to go to Montessori, but she couldn't afford it. So she had one lack of resource, which was money. And I asked her, and she was, at the time, she was working front desk at a spa. And I told her, why don't you try to get a job at Montessori? Because then your kid can go for free.
Yeah.
And, this light came to her face, and she said, I never thought about that before. I spoke to her 2 months later. She got a job doing HR at Montessori, and her kid was going to Montessori. And that was her being resourceful. She had time as her resource.
Yeah.
Same thing for another example for me now. I have a nanny a couple of hours a week for when I go to the office and see clients.
Yeah.
I talk to other girlfriends of mine who have nannies, and they don't set the precedent in the beginning to ask them to do other things than childcare. So then they feel bad asking. It's like, I've had a nanny for 2 years. I can't ask her to cook for me. Well, when I hired the nanny, I said, there's this one self-care non-negotiable that is so important to me, which is I make fresh juice. I drink green juice every single day. But now my time resource is limited. Well, Tilly naps for 2 to 4 hours a day while the nanny's here. And I said, what do you think about making juice? And you can make juice for yourself too.
Brilliant.
And she said, oh, that's so great. So I was resourceful. And now I know not everybody has hired help, but what about a girlfriend who's also complaining to you about they don't have time to cook or they don't have time to juice? Let her cook 1 or 2 nights and make you food, and then you cook 1 or 2 nights. So you both went from cooking 4 nights a week to 2 and having beautiful, fresh, organic food. You're saving money, you're saving time. That's what I mean by being resourceful with your resources, because then it becomes unlimited.
Yeah. And I know I learned this from you years ago, but also the idea of, if you're going to be batch cooking on Sunday, invite your girlfriend over so you guys could do it together. And so you're getting that I'm in community, I'm seeing my friends,
Yes.
and we're cooking food together, and it's all like cyclical there. So
and even if she doesn't want to cook, I have 2 or 3 friends that I really want, I want to check in with during the week. They always joke with me that every time they come over, I'm cooking. Like, I'm just feeding 2 birds with 1 gluten-free scone. You come over and I'm in the kitchen. Why do we need to be sitting in the living room talking? I'm in the kitchen cooking while we talk.
Yeah.
And then they leave and I feel really filled by my community and by, this female energy that I really need an exchange of during the week. And then I have food in the fridge for the next couple of days.
Yeah.
We have to really become resourceful, or else we'll be stuck in the trap of never having enough time. And you and I both know that when you feel that scarcity with time, self-care goes to the bottom of it. It's the first thing that becomes negotiable.
Yeah. And so what I do is I push the big red F it button and I shove whatever food I can find, into my mouth. And then that's where the pattern, the cycle begins, right? So let's talk about cooking, because that's definitely one of the pillars of self-care. And I really want to take a deep dive into that. Like, how do we practically make this a non-negotiable? So give us some other ideas and practical tips.
And I am such a stickler about cooking. I feel like even when you're trying to eat healthy outside of the house, you're outsourcing your health. And you're outsourcing it to a restaurant whose sole goal is to make the food taste good so that you come back as a repeat buyer. I'm not saying I think healthy food tastes fantastic, but I also love junk food and I love fried food and that stuff tastes fantastic too.
Yeah.
We've all been surprised by the article that comes out once or twice a year that says, oh, the salad at your favorite restaurant has 700 calories. And we just shake our heads saying, how is it possible to infuse this much into lettuce? But somehow they do it. Cooking is really such a non-negotiable if you want to be healthy, maintain a healthy weight, and live without disease, because then you're choosing the organic, high-quality foods. When it comes to cooking, you have two pieces of this. You have the logistics, which is what you need to do. That's go food shopping, cook, clean, pack the lunches, which usually we attach a lot of pain to. But so we have the logistics. Then you have the structure, which I consider the invisible support that allows those logistics to happen. Let me explain. What I used to do many years ago was go to the store without a list, buy the same 5 vegetables and proteins, and then get home. I would open up the fridge. I wouldn't want to cook any of it. Who wants to eat stir fry 17 times? I don't. So I would let the food go bad, eat out, and then that would only reinforce my belief that I shouldn't shop because my food just rots.
I'm wasting money. Yeah.
I'm wasting money, so I might as well spend twice as much at a restaurant.
Yeah.
My structure wasn't there. One of the most important things you need to do when you cook is you need to take 5 to 10 minutes before you go to the store, and you need to plan out the week. I don't buy anything at the store that isn't part of a meal or a snack for the week, or else I'm going to unconsciously eat at the end of the night.
Yeah.
Whenever my sister comes over, she opens the fridge and she says, there's nothing to eat here. I'm going to be eating one of your lunches or your snacks. And I've curated it that way because that helps me stay in line and eat the things that I have, when I was in clarity, sat down and said, this is what I want to put in my body for the week.
Yeah.
So you have to sit down and make a list. And I'm not just saying a list of food you need, but decide, you have to answer some questions for yourself. First, decide how many meals you are willing to cook per week. For me, I'm only willing to cook 4 meals per week. That 5th meal makes me feel like I'm a slave to the kitchen, and it just doesn't work for me. I cook 4 meals, and each meal only has 1 leftover, because if I eat a meal more than twice, I also start to feel bored, and I start to daydream about, a hamburger sandwich between 2 donuts.
Yeah.
So you have to answer those questions for yourself right now. How many times are you willing to cook? And if the answer is 1, great, that's better than 0. Are you willing to eat leftovers more often than I am? After I make those decisions, I come up with meals. I used to, before Tilly was born, make meals that were multi-step. Now that's just I'm not willing to make meals that way. Every week I'm making a crock pot meal. I'm making a grill meal. I'm making a meal that I can just basically put it in, forget it. I'm only cleaning 1 or 2 things, and they're freezable, so I can make extra for a week that I'm really busy.
Yeah.
But you see how much planning this takes? The execution is really not where I want people to focus. I want them to focus on the actual planning of it.
Yeah. And also what's working for me is because I'm a natural planner. So you tell me this, make a list, Mary, and I'm like, woo, I get really excited. But when I'm struggling, when I've hit the big red F it button, I go, oh my God, Carly, this sounds like a lot of work. But what's working for me is realizing the food, that the planning you're doing and the food that you're putting in your body is a gift. Like, it's a gift, and this is something to look forward to, not look as a hindrance of like, oh my God, this is another thing I'm putting on my to-do list.
There's so many ways also that you can cut corners. If you're going to cut corners, one, buy your protein already made. I'd rather you make your vegetables fresh, because once vegetables are cooked, they're really rapidly losing the nutrition, enzymes, cofactors, all of the things that are alive about vegetables.
Yeah.
So buy a ready-made roasted chicken. Buy your, I know at the Whole Foods here, you can go and order a piece of fish and they'll cook it for you. They'll steam it for you while you're doing the rest of your shopping. So get your protein cooked and then get a fresh vegetable. People get really stuck in, my breakfast needs to look like a breakfast food. My dinner needs to look like a dinner food. 2 of the easiest dinners are a protein smoothie, which also can satisfy a sweet tooth because you could put chocolate and almond butter and frozen banana, and also eggs. We never think to
omelets.
Yes, I call it Brinner. It's breakfast for dinner. Or it's the little things. This morning I made a bunch of little chicken apple sausage. 3 is a serving. I didn't just make 3. I made the whole container. Now I ate my 3 this morning. I put the rest in the fridge. Now for the next 2 days, I have either a snack or a meal, if I want to add some veg to it, that is already cooked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whereas before I used to just put it away and then have to recook every time.
So I'm sure there's lots of aha moments popping around when people are listening right now. What about if you've got kids and you're like, oh my God, I'm cooking this meal for this kid and this meal for myself and this one for my husband who doesn't eat blah, blah, blah. And like, how do you handle that?
Well, that could be a whole other conversation in and of itself. Mm-hmm. But I would say, when making meals, think about the base of the meal and how you can shift it. I'll just give you one example.
Yeah.
Let's take ground meat. And if you're vegetarian, I'll turn it into a veg meal in a second. Mm-hmm. So something that kids like is they like things that are smothered in cheese in a tortilla. Or is that just because I'm from Texas? I don't know.
Everything's better in a taco.
In Texas. Yes, everything's better in a taco. I travel. I say, wait, you don't have breakfast tacos? Where are the breakfast? Where's the
Carly,
breakfast taco?
You have no idea.
I'm sure you're really missing the B tacos. And so let's say I take ground any meat, turkey, chicken, grass-fed beef. For a vegetarian, this could be quinoa or a high protein. I'm not a huge fan of soy, but a high protein grain like quinoa or amaranth. And I buy a taco seasoning packet and I cook that up. Now, for me, if I'm trying to manage my weight, and for me that means being very cognizant of my carbohydrate intake, I'm throwing that over a salad with guac and a bunch of fresh veg, and that's a salad. For the children, it's going in a tortilla. They may add some cheese to it if they're not dairy intolerant. And now it's very kid-friendly.
Yeah.
For my husband, he's on his own because if he doesn't want to eat what I'm cooking, I don't care.
That's the truth.
Too bad you're eating the salad or you're eating what the kids eat or you have 2 hands and you can get in there and make yourself whatever.
Yeah.
But that is a simple way that I would alter the meal. Same thing for making some spaghetti for the kids and putting some protein on top. When I think healthy food, I think protein, fat, and fiber. Those are my 3 components. Now, the fiber are the vegetables. You want to eat as many vegetables as you could possibly get into your body. I know that there's an eye roll there, but it's true. You want to be very plant strong.
Yeah. And when you eat plants, like it's the energy coming in from the ground and from the earth into your body. Like
from the sun.
It's so cyclical, all of it. It's critically important.
The more plants you eat, the longer you live. Let's just make it very simple. Bottom line. And so you've got the fiber from the plants. The fat always comes along for the ride. It's either with the oils that you're cooking, the avocados, the nuts and seeds. I never have to worry about the fat. It's coming in. And then the protein is either going to be your animal protein source, or for vegetarians, going to be a nut, a bean, or a high protein grain like amaranth or quinoa.
Yeah.
And then you just put the 3 together. Something I've been doing lately, I've been calling it power bowls. And we've all seen this when we go to a restaurant. And I was joking with my husband last night. So last night I made chicken that I cut up into little pieces, kale, which I always squeeze citrus on green vegetables because it allows you to absorb the calcium and the iron. So always squeeze lemon on your greens. We had some roasted eggplant and then some acorn squash, and I made a dressing to go on top. And I was joking with him saying, power bowls are really throw a bunch of stuff into a bowl and put it in its perspective area, and then you call it a bowl. It's put a bunch of random stuff in a bowl. But look at that meal. I could then take the chicken and turn it very quickly into something else for the children. Yeah. If my husband wants to take that and throw it, and alter that. But the protein, fat, and fiber is there. And then as I make that meal, and this is an important tip, I have the 2 bowls out that we're eating for dinner, and then I have the 2 Pyrex glass dishes that I'm putting in. So I'm plating 4 meals to make sure I have enough for everything. 2 go in the fridge, 2 get eaten. Today at lunch, all I have to do is pull it out and warm it up.
Yeah, and you don't have to overthink this. Yeah.
No, it's just like in the past, what would I have done? Put it all in one bowl and put it in the fridge, and then in the morning while I'm rushed having to take all of those three things out, put them in their container. But no, now before I leave the house, I grab it and I go. Another thing, and if this is the last tip, we don't think about our snacks. And that's a lot of the time when we fall off because our blood sugar is low, we're crashing, then we have a snack that's unhealthy. And because all of us go-getters are so black and white thinkers, then we ate unhealthy and we go, screw it, the day is over, I messed up, I might as well start tomorrow. And that one snack sabotaged all of this healthy intention and healthy eating for the day. I plan my snacks as well. When I'm making my grocery list with my 4 meals, I say, okay, I'm going to think of 3 snacks. So for example, this week, one of my snacks is coconut milk yogurt with peaches and strawberries, some cinnamon, and some cashews. It's so easy to put together. I'm not cooking anything. That's one snack. Then I have these little pepperoni, Applegate Farms little pepperonis with some almonds and some carrots. That's one. And then my smoothie is going to be a third. It could be a meal, could be a snack. So now when I'm hungry, I don't think, what should I grab? In the morning, I'm putting these things together and it's just done. I don't want people to have to think about in the moment that they're hungry food. You are setting yourself up for disaster. I want it to be thought about beforehand so you can eat, enjoy the food, and move on with your day.
And this is truly like the foundational building blocks for you to simplify this part of your life. Like this is everything to it, because I think where we stumble is, like you said, we don't have a plan. We get stuck in the logistics. We get like, screw it, and I'll do it next week, and it never happens. So this is it, you guys. Like, it can be as simple as this, right?
And the last component to this is the mind work piece, which what we talked about before. You have the logistics, which is what we need to do. Then a little bit underneath that is the structure, which is the invisible support you give yourself, which for cooking example is the planning. And then at the very bottom of the ocean, this is how I visualize it, because the waves come up to the surface. So logistics are the waves. If you want to get the logistics covered and do it with consistency, which is what everyone is desperate for. It's not, can I do it this week? It's, can I do it week after week to see real change?
Yeah.
Is the mind work is at the very bottom of this, which is, do you attach pain to doing this or do you attach pleasure? Bottom line.
That's it.
What are your stories? As we're talking about this, check in. As you're listening to this, are you cringing, thinking, are you stressed, or are you excited and invigorated by this information? Are you thinking, wow, I could do that. I could do it for 3 meals a week and be so far ahead of where I feel right now. Because if there's pain attached to this, humans don't do anything that causes pain. Before you make the grocery list, we'll sabotage ourselves. I've seen client after client, best intentions, they do the work, and then they make the plan. They go to the store and then they don't cook it. And I know for a fact it's not because they're lazy. It's not because their priorities are messed up. It's because they are attaching pain, a story about pain, whether it's time pain, not enough time, whether it's being stuck in the kitchen, don't like to cook, and they haven't cleaned that up, that story.
Yeah.
And so it bubbles to the surface.
Yeah. And that, I can see it in my own life. Like when I have actually recently just slowed down my work schedule, I own my own business, so I can set my own schedule. Sometimes I'm my own worst boss. But when I stopped and go, wait, I own my own business, I set my own time. What about going to the library and picking up some cookbooks? Because, I'm the boss. Like, I can do that, right? No one's like watching me clock in, clock out, right? It's almost remembering and like reprogramming. Wait. Oh, actually, I am in control of my time and I can make good choices. And I can look at this as like fun and exciting. Because I grabbed 4 new cookbooks. My son, who's now a vegetarian, pronounced about 2 months ago. I'm like, oh crap, how do I cook for vegetarian 8-year-olds? Like, okay, you get the cookbooks and it's like, oh, this is actually fun. Like, it is actually fun to kind of flip through them. So it's carving out that time, looking at it as a pleasurable experience, and then just making it happen. And I
And
think,
what would add pleasure to it for you? I watch Sex and the City while I cook on my computer.
yeah.
Well, do you play music? All those Netflix shows that you want to watch but don't make the time for. I am never just cooking, or I'm listening to a book on tape or a podcast or, and most of the time Sex and the City.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm looking for ways to attach more pleasure, because sometimes depending what it is, you can't attach more pleasure to it. You're scooping the kitty litter. You're picking the kids up from school. That it would be really a reach for me to say, ooh, there's so much pleasure in scooping the kitty litter right now.
Yeah.
But if I can attach something to it to make it just 51% more pleasurable than it is painful,
Yeah.
then I'll do it, especially if I think about the outcome of what it's going to create for me.
And I want to remind all of you guys that are listening, Carly's website is chock full of resources and recipes and all sorts. So if you are inspired and looking for some more ideas of just how to make this actually simple and pleasurable and fun, definitely go check out nutritionalwisdom.com. So Carly, let me ask you a couple of questions that I like to ask all of my guests as they come on. First and foremost, is there a book you are reading right now that is either inspiring you or maybe poking holes at you and challenging some of your beliefs right now?
I'm one of those people that reads 4 books at once.
Yeah.
And I think it's a talent of mine that I can read multiple books at once and not get lost. I would say the book I'm reading right now that's really challenging me is a book called Medical Medium by Anthony Williams. Mm-hmm. And it's challenging me because he's putting out a lot of information that would be quite controversial to what is holistic medicine right now. But it also is very much piquing my interest.
Yeah, so we'll put a link in the show notes for people to check that book out. I keep being told about this book as well, so it keeps coming up. I know. Maybe I need to get him on the podcast and talk to him soon.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So who is maybe one person in your network, either a colleague or a friend, that you think is just really doing amazing stuff in the world that could come onto the podcast and simplify one topic either in business or in life? Who do you recommend we talk to?
There's a few people that come to mind, but the person that came to mind first is a friend of mine and a colleague, and her name is Rebecca Campbell. She's a Hay House author. She wrote Light is the New Black, and she wrote Rise, Sister Rise. And she's just a fantastic woman and resource for you to speak to about, the female coming, there's female strength, and she does so much in the spiritual realm of finding your truth, and she does retreats all over the world, and you would just love her.
I love it. Yeah, she definitely sounds like my kind of girl, so we'll definitely have her on the podcast soon. So in my world, gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell us, what's one thing you're grateful for right now?
There's so much, and I do a daily gratitude, so there's so much that comes through. But I would say right in this moment, I'm really grateful for my family. Today is Rosh Hashanah, which is a Jewish holiday. It's the Jewish New Year, and we're getting together tonight, the whole family, and setting intentions for a sweet new year to come. And it's a beautiful time to just think about your year prior and how you want to step into this next year. And my family is so amazing. So I would say that it's the new year for us, and that I'm really grateful for all the people around me who really love me.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for you. I mean, you have been a cheerleader in the back of my head for many, many years. I love you so much, and I think you're just amazing.
Thank you so much.
So I want to also remind you guys that you can find Carly online. Where do you hang out the most in social media? Instagram? Is that a good place to find you?
I'm all over Instagram, but I have a bunch of YouTube videos. If everybody wants to learn more about nutrition and how spirituality plays into making permanent change, we're launching this week my new website, which is carlypollack.com, which is where the blog will live.
Great.
And I write a weekly blog, and that's where you'll find most of the amazing up-to-date information. It's completely free. So I would say go to nutritionalwisdom.com, go to carlypollack.com, and then head over to my YouTube page, which is Carly Pollack, and start watching some videos.
Excellent. And Carly is also offering all of our listeners a discount off of her 4-week online program, which is End Emotional Eating. So you're offering a 50% discount?
Yeah, I am hooking it up.
That is so good. So you guys, the promo code is Simplifiers, and make sure to click the link in our show notes and you'll be able to find details all about this 4-week online program, which you can take anytime throughout the year to help you kind of reset and, tackle emotional eating. What do you consider is emotional eating? Just real quick.
Yeah, emotional eating is any time we're eating without an awareness or intention of physical hunger. Mm-hmm. There's only 2 reasons why we eat. We eat for physical hunger, and then we eat for emotional reasons. And, there's 80 plus emotions that we can feel. So there's a lot of reason to eat other than being physically hungry. So emotional eating is any time where I go to put food in my mouth and I'm not aware of what I'm doing, or I'm not physically hungry, but I'm not even aware that I'm not physically hungry because I'm just not bringing enough presence to what I'm doing. So the 4-week program really helps you understand what drives you to eat foods that aren't good for you, that give you a stomach ache, that make you gain weight. What drives you to do that despite so badly wanting to lose weight, feel great, have health, and then giving you tools to interject when you find yourself in a pattern and help you create a new pattern.
Mm-hmm. And remember, you guys, not every day is perfect. You don't be fooled by everybody else's Instagram feeds of filtered beautifulness. Sometimes kids have meltdowns. Sometimes they poop their pants. Sometimes, you have just running off
4 months old all the time. They poop their pants.
you're probably, there are going to be days where you're running off of 2, 3, 4 hours of sleep. And just to remember, it's okay.
When I'm emotionally eating, because it happens all the time for me, and I teach this and I do workshops on this and I have courses on this, and it still happens all the time for me. Yeah. It is my trigger to know that my self-care is not there.
Right.
So the second, your plate is a reflection of your inner state. And if there's something on your plate you're looking at and wanting to change, it's really not about the food. It's about going deeper. So instead of beating yourself up for I'm not perfect, or I did this thing again, or when we get really humbled because we've done really well for so long and then we fall back, instead look at it as a gentle nudge from your higher self saying, hey, there's something here that you need to look at, that needs to be further healed, that needs to be further examined. So it's almost like a hug from a friend, like, hey, it's a gentle reminder, not something for you to feel bad about.
Or shame or guilt. Yeah. Your plate is a reflection of your inner state. I love that so much. So Carly, I'd like to end on one final question. Given all the things we talked about, and there's so many ideas that have been shared, and when you guys go to the show notes, you'll be able to click on so many more resources that are at hand for you. If a listener is listening right now and she's feeling excited about it and inspired and like, oh, maybe there is something to this. Maybe I could stop eating junk fast food and my kids' chicken nuggets every night. But she's feeling a little bit nervous. Where to even begin? Can you give her one word to encourage her right now, if you could whisper into her ear?
I would say patience. Be patient with yourself, because one small step is important. And even if you do the right thing a few times and quote unquote the wrong thing a bunch more times, that right thing, it's not erased. Mm-hmm. It is planting a seed. So be patient with yourself. But also the second word that came up was surrender. Mm-hmm. And focus. So many words come up. It just depends on the day. Focus on what it is you want. And if there's one thing that you do after you listen to this, it's not necessarily making a grocery list or planning out your meals, which would be fantastic. But the one thing would be to wake up and give yourself 2 minutes to set an intention and visualize yourself eating throughout the day. Mm-hmm. Visualize yourself at the office saying no to the cookies. Visualize yourself at the restaurant ordering the salad. Visualize yourself all the way until 9 o'clock where you're sitting on the couch and you're thinking about what you ate that day and you're feeling really empowered and proud and that there was a lot of self-love and self-respect with what you chose to put in your body. Visualize yourself the next morning waking up feeling skinny, feeling lean, feeling toned, feeling healthy, feeling energetic, and put that out there. That's far more important than actually making the list. That's what's going to get you to make the list and follow through.
Right, right. And it's all about nourishing yourself. Like, what are you going to eat, drink, do in your day that helps truly nourish you? Yeah. Carly, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I want to come back.
Yay!